All right, we will go ahead and get started. I am Suzanne Willis, and I will be your instructor for both the lecture and lab parts of Chem 151 this semester. Are y'all good? Can you hear me fine? Y'all are my trial run, so flag me or chat me, you know, if you can't hear or can't see whatever I'm talking about. I will be recording all of these sessions, so if you would like to hide your camera, you are welcome to do so. Otherwise, you may be one of the few people who show up right here. So I will be posting these just on Moodle for our course, so people can watch it if they're not here, especially today. So thanks for making it. I'm glad y'all were able to be here. And mostly today, we're gonna run through kind of the syllabus, and I'll show you the middle page and where you can find everything for the course. And then we'll start with chapter 1 with the notes there towards the end. So first, I guess, introduction to myself. I am Suzanne Willis. You're welcome to call me Suzanne. And I've taught chemistry for, I guess, 12 years now. I went to Appalachian and then to Wake Forest and UNCW for graduate school. But I've been at AB Tech for the last 7 or 8 years and has not been a virtual thing. We've always been in class. So this is kind of the first full semester online. But I've loved it being there, and the summer went well online as well. But I kind of just prefaced the course by saying, you know, I learned some lessons this summer, but we're also still working out kinks and figuring out how to make this work best, not being in person. So please don't hesitate to email me if something would be helpful that you don't see happening in the course, or if anything's ever confusing, that kind of thing. I am happy to hear feedback. That's really helpful to me. So yeah, I also have 3 little kids that are generally out of the house during this time at least. So they most likely will not be here. But if ever something changes, then you may see little faces. But I also have a 4th on the way, which I tell you because the baby's due on Thanksgiving Day. But unless something goes not according to plan, then I will be your instructor the full semester. So I'll be in touch closer to time with you about that. But just so that wouldn't totally strike you as surprised if you ever were contacted by another instructor. But otherwise, planning to be with you guys through December. So let me go to the middle page. That'll just kind of get us started and help me organize my thoughts for you guys. And once again, feel free to chat, just give a question mark or something, or ask the question that way, whichever way. But if you have a question and you just want to put a question mark in the chat, then I'll pause and let you talk. Is probably the easiest way to do it. So this is the syllabus. This is not middle. Oh, here we go. This is technically mastering chem. Excuse me, y'all would just, I'll get better. Okay. Here's our middle page. Okay, are y'all able to see that? Fine, let me know if not. So here's our middle page. At the top, I will always have our upcoming links for this week. So the Zoom links for lecture and lab. Now this hopefully won't be very confusing, but y'all are 2 sections. So what that means is we are all together for lecture Monday and Wednesdays, but then you either have lab on Mondays or Wednesdays. So I'm looking at B4 here, which technically is the Wednesday lab group, but we are gonna exist as pretty much as a unit. I will communicate separately to y'all via email just because due dates will be slightly different. But in general, all of our lab times will look the same and you'll all be together for lecture. So if you notice a Wednesday lab, don't panic if that's not you. You'll stay on for today. And then the other thing that'll be at the top of Moodle is always the due dates that are coming up. So here, I'll just have the due dates that kind of lead up to the next test generally. I'll show you where all of the schedule and layout is, but here are the due dates. I'm also realizing that I don't necessarily see a chat thing. Will you unmute yourself if anybody has chatted? Otherwise, nothing has popped up and it's not in my view. Okay. Oh, now I see one. Okay, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate the test. Okay. So here will be the due dates. And then down below that is kind of the intro material. So right here is AB Tech's video that is about their response to the virus. So really, this is mostly an important video to watch if you're going to go to campus for any reason. So if you're going to go to the library, which now has computers available for students, if you go there, for example, then you would please watch this video first so that you're not surprised by any regulations that are in place. I mean, they're pretty normal as far as you have to be masked, etc., social distanced, all that. But please watch that video if you plan to go to campus. Here is the syllabus. There's a mini one, which I'm going to run through today. It more so just highlights the really key points. And then here's a very full and lengthy syllabus. And I will ask that after today's class session, you run through that full syllabus and just make sure that you feel good about all the policies. If you have any questions, please ask me. But if not, then what I would need you to do next is go to the syllabus verification form. And all you'll be doing on there is clicking it and saying, yes, you understand the policies, you're good to agree with the syllabus, etc. That is not for a grade, but that will kind of note your attendance in the course and say, yes, I've been here and I am participating in the class. Course announcements will just be for me. The next two links right here will both be for tutoring options for you. So the Academic Learning Center here, this flyer will tell you the information about the Learning Center. It's the tutoring centers on campus generally, but they are functioning via Zoom. So the hours are here, and you can of course pull this up for yourself, but they're pretty lengthy hours. So Monday through Saturday, 9 to 9, and Sunday, 12 to 9. So you can hop on there via Zoom. The link is down here, and ask questions for 5 minutes or for 2 hours. So I really encourage you to use that resource. My students always do well if they use this regularly. That's not to say everybody will use it or needs it, but if you feel like you're participating in the class, you're working through stuff and it's still not making sense, then that's going to be your best bet to go for help, because they are really familiar with our course and can answer questions very easily. So that's that. The second option here is what's called Smart or Thinking Storm. It's changed names a couple times. Thinking Storm, which is also an AB Tech resource, but it's a 24-hour tutoring service. So if you are more so doing your homework overnight because of a work schedule, then Thinking Storm might be a great option for you to ask questions. The only drawback to that is that it is limited, I think, to 5 hours per student per semester. If that ends up being what you need and you need more time than that, please let me know. There may be a way to get more hours for you. But that's more so kind of I can't use the Learning Center, so I'm going to use Thinking Storm at night. And then here's some links to periodic table, links to my information. By the way, there's a lot of stuff here that you won't see. So this is a bit messier than what your screen will look like. And then this course messaging, that's going to be our discussion board. I am not really a participant in this discussion board. I will email you guys with information that I want you all to know as a class. But this is if you want to ask other students any types of questions. So if you think another student might be able to help you with a concept, or hey, are y'all having trouble with this as well, to communicate with one another somehow, then you can use that however you feel comfortable. So for a quick second, I'm going to pause and go look at the mini syllabus, and then I'll kind of hop back here to middle. I'll assume no questions, but you're welcome to chime in now if you have any. Okay, here's the mini syllabus. Now, once again, you may be in the B3 group, which is the Monday lab, or B4, which is Wednesday lab. So for those two sections, you will have a different course ID here. So please don't write this red color down because you'll need to look on Moodle and get your mini syllabus so that you have your correct course ID. But here is my information. I don't really have a phone number or location because I won't be on campus at all. So email is going to be the best way to communicate. And that's how I will communicate with you all as much as possible. So Moodle, you've already seen that's where the syllabus was. You'll see the current due dates at the top. And then there's also the link to all of the videos and course materials, which I'll show you here in a second. So the syllabus, the full one will line out all the policies in detail. This mini syllabus is just going to kind of highlight most important things. Email, please check regularly. And I am very quick to respond to emails, or I don't respond. Generally, I respond. But what I mean by that is if you do not hear from me within 24 hours, please email me again. You are not bugging me. So I generally will respond right after I get it, as long as I don't need to look stuff up for you. So please feel free to email. I am happy to answer any questions that you have and clarify things about the course there or content. The grading breakdown. So you only have 3 types of assignments. You have tests, which are on Moodle. I'll show you those. They are 50% of your grade. Labs are 25% of your grade. They will primarily be from the lab manual from AB Tech, and you will upload them onto Moodle for me to grade. And there are a couple of labs that will be mastering chemistry assignments instead. I'll talk about those when I get there. And then homework is your mastering chemistry assignments, and that's 25% of your grade. So those are the only graded assignments you'll have. Videos, let's see, I've got a question, I think. Yes, we will have a final. So the way the tests work, let me, you know what, I'll answer that in just a second. Good question. So if I go ahead and talk about the 3 graded assignments, let me do that. So mastering chemistry, that is what you're going to sign up for. You're going to purchase the access code. Hopefully you received my earlier email with all of the information about materials. If you added, really recently and didn't get that, let me know. But the materials are listed here. Sorry to jump around so much, but you will need a textbook. However, the textbook itself does not have to be 14th edition. It can be older. It also can be a different general chemistry book. They're gonna all have the same material in them. It might be nice to have the same one, just an older edition, because it'll follow a little better, but that's the textbook situation. Mastering chemistry is required, and you will pull up your specific syllabus and get the course ID. It'll be in red, but it may differ from this, or it will differ if you're in the Wednesday lab group. You'll need that course ID to get onto Mastering Chemistry. You can buy the access code either right there on the website, or you can purchase it in the AB Tech bookstore. The Mastering Chemistry, you also have the option of either purchasing it just by itself, or it can come with an e-text. So the e-text is another option for a textbook, if you feel good about having it just on your computer to look at as needed. So Mastering Chemistry will look like this. I'll pull it up for you. Our 2-week free trial. let's see if I can pull yours up. So this is what we'll call your homework. And the way these assignments will work is you will have 2 attempts on each one. You don't have to use both attempts, but if you do, it will just keep your highest grade. So you'll notice here, there's one for every chapter and the due date is there. I also have these due dates in the syllabus and at the top of Moodle, you know, as we go along. So you'll begin with chapter 1 here and you can work through it completely 2 times if you'd like. If you do it once and feel great about it, then you can use the second as just practice as much as you'd like. It won't hurt your grade. There is an intro to mastering Chem assignment right here. This is completely optional. I will not see whether you did it and it will not count as a grade. But if you're new to this program and would like to just be able to answer some questions, see how it functions a little bit, then you can use that as a practice assignment. Another thing about these is you can start and stop the assignments as many times as you'd like. So don't panic that once you start, you're gonna have to finish everything. So if you get to a question that we haven't covered yet, that's totally fine. Just X out and you can come back to it later. It'll always save your work as you go. So you can take your time. There is no time limit on those. So you can take as much time as you'd like. They really are meant to, yes, count as a homework grade, but really they're not meant to test you per se. They're really just hopefully a tool to help you practice along the way. You'll notice here there are 3 lab assignments. These are labs that are in your lab manual, but they are only problems. And so instead of doing the lab manual version, we are going to just do the Mastering Chem versions here because they'll automatically be graded for you and you'll be familiar with the structure and everything. So whenever I refer to those, you'll see them listed there as well. So that's the homework and Mastering Chem. One of these grades will be dropped automatically. So your lowest grade will get dropped there. If I hop back to this Mastering Chem. As far as late goes, you can always complete these throughout the semester. So it says here the late penalty will be 5% per day past the due date. It'll never go down more than 50%. So it's always best to complete these, even if they're going to be after the due date. They will still be available for you. Okay, so that's Mastering Chem. Any questions on Mastering Chem at the moment? Good there? Okay. And then lab, so we will mostly use the lab manual that's from the AB Tech bookstore. It's, I think, $5. It's just a packet of paper, really. And the way we'll use that is I have posted videos for you of the different lab procedures. So let's see, question. Okay, yeah, with the Mastering Chemistry, so someone said they tried to the access code and it didn't work. So if you are running into any issues with your access code, number 1, make sure that it matches our textbook perfectly. So Brown LeMay, 14th edition, all that. And it didn't work for me, okay. Another issue is sometimes if you have an account already, if you took 092, sometimes it's actually harder to get in than if you're fresh. So email me actually individually or during your lab time if you're lab today. At the end of this, I'll also leave a few minutes for y'all to ask questions. So if you're having any issues with actually getting set up on Mastering Chem, then email or ask me at the end of class and I'll be glad to try to walk you through that. The other thing I didn't say about that is if you have taken Chem 151 within the last year, your access code is still good. It's good for a whole calendar year, so you shouldn't have to purchase a new one. You'll just have to put in my new access, your new course ID. Okay, someone did say they also had that issue. They tried re-enrolling and it worked. So maybe give it another shot and then feel free to let me know if it doesn't work and I'll be glad to help you there. And they also have a help that I can contact you with, put you in contact with. Anything else Mastering Chemistry wise? And I know that is not always people's favorite aspect of the course, if there is a favorite aspect. Some people really don't like mastering Chem, but I will be honest and say that the homework grades on there very much line up with the test grades oftentimes. So if you're putting in time to the homework and you see it as valuable rather than just busy work, because that's really what it's meant to be, is to help you practice. So if you're spending time there and trying to be patient with the program itself, then hopefully it's going to help you not only with your homework grade, but also prepare you for tests. Okay. All right. So labs, what we'll be doing for labs is on the middle page. And I'll get back to this lecture link here, but the lab submission. So you'll see this big section for labs. There's a link to all the lab resources, videos, and instructions. So what you'll pull up here is this document that has a couple of notes for every experiment. Most of them have procedures. So for example, experiment 2, you'll see it has an experiment 2 info, data, and video links. When you click on it, it's going to lay out everything you need to do for experiment 2. So it'll tell you the pages to complete. It'll pretty much always have an introductory video, which will be me just walking you through the brief procedure and any calculations. Specifically calculations is really what I put in the intro videos, especially if they're pretty lengthy. So you'll go watch that video first. That'll just kind of preface it. And then of course, when you're doing calculations, you may want to go back to that video and start and stop as needed to help you through your own calculations. Those are always just sample numbers. I've just kind of plugged in numbers there to practice. And then you'll run through using your lab manual. You'll go through and watch part A video and you'll answer whatever questions based on it. And then part B, you'll watch the video and record the data, and then you'll complete calculations. And that hopefully will become kind of repetitive. What you will notice here is that some of the data will be given in the videos, like these 2 spots, but then rather than watching you have it done 5 times, the other 4 trials just have data here for you. So you'll transfer that into your lab manual, and then you would complete all the empty blanks through your calculations. And that'll walk you through all of the parts of the lab. So every lab that has a procedure of some sort will have that full document. And then the other thing that you'll notice is the experiment 2 intro video notes. All that is if you've watched my intro video, these are just the written notes that I took while I was talking. So anything I said or anything that I wrote during that video would show up here. The reason I put that here is because a lot of times I'll focus on some calculations here so that you can then go look at them for a little while, and rather than watching the video over and over again. So you could kind of work through them that way. This first lab coming up is a little bit different because it's just a dry lab. So you're just going to complete the problems in the lab manual. There is a video here that's by another instructor. It kind of just introduces you to the meter stick, but it's not a procedure. So you can use that video as needed, but all experiment 1 is going to tell you is just to complete the pages. And it'll mention to you that you'll need to use chapter 1 lecture material mostly. I put 1 and 2 here, but it's actually pretty much all chapter 1. What pages to complete, reminding you to use significant figures, which we'll talk about during class. So here's where all the information is for lab. That all came from this one link. And then what you'll do is once you complete those pages in your lab manual, you will need somehow to be able to take a picture of your completed pages, convert them to PDF, and then submit them here. So lab submission links, you'll go to experiment 1 and it'll just have you upload the PDF. So in the syllabus, I have listed a few free apps that students have used that have worked fine. Please let me know if you have any questions there. And what I'll be able to do is grade these on Moodle. So assuming they're in a PDF version, I can actually mark up and show you, which ones you need to look back to, make comments if you're missing a page, that kind of thing. So you'll just check on Moodle for both your grade and for my comments for those. And then you'll notice there are 3, once again, that are on Mastering Chem, and you won't do them in your lab manual, like experiment 4, for example. It's just practicing naming. So rather than doing your lab manual pages, we will do that on Mastering Chem. Any questions with labs? One thing I'll say is if you're not able to get the lab manual this week, please let me know and I will email you a copy of the first lab, because it's only a couple of pages that you're doing the calculations. It would be better to go ahead and be able to stay on pace than to wait for your lab manual for that first one. So please let me know via email if that's delayed or anything for you, and I can send you a copy. Lab questions, y'all feel good about that? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
A question about Mastering Chemistry. Did you mention that there's a 2-week free trial with that?
Yes, there is.
And then you have to pay?
You would still then have to sign up and pay the regular price.
Okay.
It's just giving students either a little bit of time to figure out financial aid situation, or to figure out, if they're going to stay in the class. So if they wanted to test it out for a little bit.
But if I do the free trial, it's still going to save my work.
That's what they have conveyed to us. Yes, I think they would have been clear had it been something that wouldn't link. So I think you'll still use my course ID, so you'll be enrolled and everything.
Great, thank you.
If you go that route and want to check and make sure that I can see all your stuff, then feel free to do that.
Okay.
One last thing about labs is that you do have one lowest lab grade that'll also be dropped. So far we've talked to Mastering Chem, one lowest grade is dropped. The labs, one lowest grade is dropped. And then lastly are the tests. So the tests are posted here on Moodle. Okay, someone said that for biology, the website said it saved the work for the teacher and student after the trial period. So y'all should be good there. Thank you. Okay, so here's where you'll take tests. Tests are the one thing that really need to be completed in their window of time, which reminds me also that I need to back up just for a second to labs. Let me go back to the due date. They are reduced by 10% per day, and it says up to 2 days late. So we really try to keep you up and on schedule for labs as far as it goes along with the material and for grading purposes, and that we're giving back feedback to the students. However, for most students. So if you do get really sick or there are, crazy circumstances, these penalties are somewhat set, but please do email me if you as much as possible. You just would need to communicate with me if it's going to be past that due date. Okay. And that's college-wide in the fact that we are all hoping to help as much as we can this semester specifically. So, and once again, one lab will be dropped. So if you do just have a bad week and want to just let one lab go, okay, and then to tests. So, and I know that's where that question came from earlier as well. So tests, they're posted on Moodle. You only get one attempt per test, and it is the only thing that is timed. So tests do have a time limit, And all of that's posted right there with the test name. I'll show you that here in a minute. But there is a time limit. It'll also tell you how many questions there are in the test. And if you have any accommodations with the college, please let me know, and I am able to extend that time limit. I will need the documentation to show that, but if you need double time, for example, just touch base with me and I can adjust that for you. We don't drop a lowest test grade. However, we do have a final exam. It's not the ACS exam. So if you've taken the course before, or you've heard of the ACS, it's not that. We've made a departmental final exam online, and it counts as 2 test grades automatically by itself. But additionally, it can replace a lowest test grade if it helps you. So if you get an 80 on the final and you had a 60 on one of your tests, it'll count as that test grade as well. So we don't drop a test, but it can count as that. That's also kind of how we deal with a missed test. So if there's one test we can't work it out and you can't get to it, your class material. So anything that we have provided for you or that you've taken, like notes, textbook, formula sheet, Moodle, anything there you're able to use. We ask that you don't use other people and that you don't use other random websites. So you're using our course material, and just within that time limit, you're welcome to access your notes and that kind of thing for tests. Okay, so here's chapter 1 and 2 test. It'll tell you, you always you can only start at one time though, and you have to complete it within that time limit. It reminds you just of the policy there. Once again, if your work schedule or something were to happen, you know, taking a test early is generally not a problem. You can let me know. I know sometimes I've had students have heavy workloads, work schedules those 2 days. You would have to talk about circumstance and such. So please communicate if you ever are having an issue with a test date. And we also can take the final exam once again and count it as one of those tests if we need to. And even the final exam's already posted there for you, and it will be comprehensive. It's on the entire course material. Now, any questions on kind of the grading? So we've got the tests, the labs, and Mastering Chem. Everything else is going to be kind of just up to you to help you that you see on here. So the lecture videos here, what I have posted is I have my pre-recorded lectures already here, just in case someone wants to maybe work ahead or watch a chapter before they come to class. Then you can watch my pre-recorded videos here. They're there for the entire semester. However, I will be using the same notes and covering the same material in our live lectures on Mondays and Wednesdays. So there's no need to see the pre-recorded unless that's just helpful to you. The live lectures I am recording, like I mentioned earlier, for you. And so I will link those here. So if you were to miss a class period, you can go back and watch them. Or even if you were here, but you know, kind of missed something, like to read the type of problem, I will update that throughout the week. So there's nothing there right now, but this lecture will go on there later today or by tomorrow morning. Okay, so that's where you can find those live videos if you miss a class. And for students who weren't able to make it today, that's where they can kind of get caught up. Questions there? For those, the way I teach is I use these things called guided notes. So the rest of Moodle is really just broken into each section for each chapter. So there will be PowerPoint slides for each chapter. I personally don't teach using those, but we kind of provide the same thing for all the department classes. So there are the PowerPoints. Here are kind of department handouts and objectives and Mastering Chem link. So all of those are kind of just general use. They are not specific to my course or teaching. What I will always be using are these things called guided notes. So you'll notice that there's going to be a blank copy and there's going to be a filled in copy. These are the notes that I'm using to run through the lecture. So the pre-recorded lectures and the lab lectures will both use these. What I recommend is printing this blank document, and it's just a Word document. Which I can show you though. It'll look like this. And what I do is just run through this and I will fill it in as I talk with y'all. And so I recommend that you do the same. If you're able to print them, then you would kind of follow along and fill in as we go, just to help you instead of just sitting and listening to me the whole time. It probably helps a lot to kind of be writing it as I go and working together. And I have put the filled in notes as well. So they're there with my notes and answers and all that as well. Usually below that, there are some extra handouts. Those are just practice problems I've used in the past. There's nothing there that you have to do, but they're there if you need some extra problems and want to see my work. There's generally a blank copy and a key for each. You'll see that general layout for every chapter. So you'll want to focus on guided notes because that's what I'll be using. And then the filled in ones are there and you can use whatever you'd like after that. Okay. And then at the very bottom middle, there are a bunch of videos. This is another instructor who has made a lot of detailed videos for this course. So I like to put them there in case just hearing somebody else talk about the same concept might be helpful, or if one specific thing isn't making sense, then you're welcome to go use these, but those are totally optional. They're not me talking about the same stuff, but just kind of in a different form. Okay, so that's kind of an intro to the middle course. Feel free to pop in with questions if you have. Otherwise, I'm going to go back and just make sure I covered everything on this mini syllabus before we move on from the intro stuff. Web Advisor will be where your final grades are posted at the end of the semester. I already mentioned the 2 tutoring options for you. So the Academic Learning Center, the flyer is posted on Moodle for you. Here's also the Zoom link, so you could just go there as well. Thinking Storm, that's the one that's available 24 hours a day. And it tells you here that you'll need to use your full AV Tech email and Moodle password. So that'll help you get logged in. Course materials, we've said all this at this point, but the textbook could be any form of the textbook you want. E-text, hard copy, older, fine. Mastering Chemistry is what needs to be really specific for the 14th edition. You'll need to figure out some app that, here are a few that are listed here, that can convert your pictures to PDF for your labs. The lab manual will need to come from the AV Tech bookstore. And then scientific calculator, your phone is fine as long as you're able to figure out scientific notation and logs on there is totally fine. So you can check with me if you're concerned about what calculator you're working with, but it doesn't need to be graphing. We're not going to be graphing in this course on a calculator. And then just regular online access. And the last thing here is our schedule. So this will probably be the most important thing here, really. So it's going to tell you weekly what lectures to be watching. So for you, you're already seeing the introductory video, so you're done there. Chapter 1, that's what we'll be going through today and Wednesday. And also in lab, we'll be covering some of chapter 1. It'll tell you whatever lab is being completed that week, and then any other assignments you should be working on. So remember, the syllabus verification is on Moodle, just to say, yes, you've read the syllabus. One last thing about the way the labs will work. So you'll see when labs are due. It's generally, if you are a Monday lab, it's going to be due Sunday night because that gives you a full 7 days. If you're a Wednesday lab, it's going to be due Tuesday nights so that you also still have the full week. The way the labs will work, and this may get tweaked or change a little bit on certain weeks, but my hope is that, like next week, for example, you have already submitted experiment 1 because it's due. So you come to lab next week, having already watched the videos for experiment 2. So kind of working a little bit ahead for the lab so that when you come to lab, you have questions to ask and then you can complete it from there. So I'm not going to do a ton of lab talk because you have the videos where the procedures are. I can't show you the procedures here. And I've also laid out the calculations. So as best you can, if you can visit the upcoming experiment, then you can just ask me your final questions and then you can finish that throughout the week. The other good thing about the lab time is that's going to be just opening up a time for you all. So once people ask lab questions, I'm happy to answer content material. So if you're having trouble with a certain type of problem, then please bring it and I'll be glad to work it out for you during that time. Okay. And that works all the way through the schedule, so, of the semester. I think that's all for my intro as far as how the course works. So do y'all have any questions for me before we jump over to chemistry stuff? Let's see, one. Okay, someone was also saying, yeah. So what we'll do for the next few minutes is jump over to the chapter 1 notes. So if you did not print these for today, that's totally fine. You can just jot down notes as we go. And you don't have to print these in general, just most students generally come to my course with these printed to be able to kind of fill it in as we go. And both during lecture and lab, that's only because the lab is a dry lab time, so it kind of helps us just keep going this intro week with this material. Okay, once again, y'all are my guinea pigs in a few ways, so let me know if you're unable to see things or have questions as we go, okay? So here for chemistry, we talked really just about what are the things that we're gonna be talking about this semester and how do we start classifying different substances? What kind of categories do they fall into? So here we generally say chemistry is just the study of matter. And a lot of times we hear matter as defined as just the stuff of the universe, and matter technically is anything that has mass and takes up space. So has mass and takes up space. Now this is where hopefully you'll see some improvement. I've already improved on this thing, but let me know if you can't read something. Hopefully I'll get clearer. So the atoms are the building blocks of all matter. And these are found on the periodic table. So all the different types of atoms are found on the periodic table. I always kind of liken it to the alphabet where, we have this huge, array of words and sentences, but they're all made up of the same 26 letters, just in different combinations. So kind of the same thing with atoms. These are all the tiny, tiny pieces that go together in all the different arrangements, and they make up the matter around us. So in the beginning of this chapter, we're kind of just categorizing matter and being able to describe it a little bit better. So the states of matter, we're all familiar with the states of matter, but we've got solid and liquid and gas. And we want to be familiar with what do the particles look like when they're in all of these different states and kind of what are the transitions, right, between the different ones. So what we know about a solid is if you change a solid to liquid, we kind of all know this, but this is called melting. And then if you come back in this direction, we're freezing. Of course, you also could say solidifying. There's certainly other words that you use, but these are kind of our most common ones. Liquid to gas, it has several. So, you know, in normal life in the kitchen, we would say boil most likely, but here we talk about evaporation, vaporization. Boiling is still fine. You know, you're changing liquid to gas. And then gas back down to liquid is condensation. So what's happening on your cold drink, for example, the gas is turning into liquid on the outside of the cup, very annoyingly. And then also we can skip phases. So it's not really common necessarily, but straight from solid all the way to gas would be sublimation. So like dry ice, for example, carbon dioxide, it'll go straight from solid to gas form. And then the opposite of that, gas back down to solid. It's a real good line here. That is deposition. This really isn't common in just the natural world. This generally would happen under high pressure. So yes, you could drop temperature, but if you apply extreme pressure, you can take gas molecules and convert them straight into solid. So here, if we talk about the just characteristics of these briefly, and I'm running out of a little bit of space, so I'll try to make sense of it. But solids, if we start down here, we just said that we can change a gas to solid by adding or applying extreme pressure. The reason that is because solids, all of their molecules are already very closely packed together. So solids, they are closely packed. So someone asked, if you go from gas to solid, is that instant or is there a brief stage of, you know, the liquid showing up? There's definitely some wiggle room at times. So one thing we'll look at in this course are what are called phase diagrams. And it will actually show you that under certain pressures, it will go instantaneously, as much as we can understand, straight from gas to solid. So we would not be able to see the liquid state. But yeah, there's definitely going to be that blurred transition in between where some molecules are still a little bit more in one state than the other until you get the complete conversion. So good question. I'd say definitely at certain conditions, it's going pretty much directly from gas to solid. So what I mean here by the closely packed is that the atoms are closely packed. They're also very well arranged. So there's generally a fixed arrangement all right here. And I'll kind of give you a picture of what I mean. So fixed arrangement, just like if you have solid copper, all the copper molecules, or really the copper atoms, are set up in a real pretty uniform shape. That's not the best picture of that, to be honest, but really just very evenly distributed, very orderly, and the molecules are close together. Because these molecules are close together, that means that a solid is going to have what we say a definite volume. So a definite shape and volume. So in general, you know, you can't pour a solid. Like a solid isn't going to take on the shape of its container. It's going to stay with its own shape because all the molecules are holding on tightly to one another. So they have a definite shape and also a definite volume. So you can't easily squish them down. You know, I can't make the table take up less space than it takes up. Only so many solids will fit in the closet at a time, kind of thing. So those are the main characteristics of a solid. Whereas a liquid, some similarities and some differences here. What we would say about a liquid is that it still actually has molecules that are closely packed. So a liquid, let's see, maybe I can do this. Okay. Liquids, the molecules are still closely packed. The example I always think of is, you know, if you have coffee, for example, you can't squish it down to fit more into your mug because the molecules are already still really close together. They're already squished. So these are both called condensed phases. They're already as small as they can go volume-wise. What's different about liquid is this fixed arrangement, though. There's no longer a fixed arrangement between the molecules. They actually have freedom to move between one another. So liquids, we would say here, they have what we could say a random arrangement. There's no longer that order, even though they're still close together. So then try to think to yourself, what does that tell you about? If the molecules are already squished together, it should kind of make sense to us that the volume is set. So it still has a definite volume. It's taking up a certain amount of space. I can't change that. However, we would say it has an indefinite shape. So it will take the shape of its container because the molecules are free to move. So they can flow from one container to another and they'll fit fine in the other as far as the shape goes. And then lastly, the gas. So gases are really pretty much opposite of solids. Their molecules are spread out as far as they can. So very spread out. And that depends on what space you give them, right? So if you give them just a balloon, they'll spread out within that balloon. If you give them an entire room, they're gonna spread out. They're not gonna hover in one corner or one part of the room. They're gonna spread out as far as they can. And so here we say they have an indefinite shape and volume. What that means is they will take on the shape of the container, meaning their shape can change very easily. Their volume also can change really easily. So you can definitely compress molecules closer because they have space between them. Any trouble hearing me or anything? Every once in a while it blinks to say it's unstable here, so let me know if you have any problems. Okay, so that's just one way we can kind of describe matter. We can talk about what phase it's in, solid, liquids, or gas phase. We can also classify matter. Okay, maybe going in and out on some people's. Let me know if y'all have trouble. Okay. Feel free to ask me to repeat if you need me to. Okay, so here for matter, we also can put it into different categories. So our main two categories are called pure substances or mixtures. And then they kind of branch on down from there. So if we focus on these pure substances, for example, so the left side of this diagram, pure substances can either be a single element, which is really kind of easy because you find the elements on the periodic table. So if you have just copper or just iron, just oxygen, one type of atom, that's an element. So down here I can actually go ahead and write that for element. Only one type of atom. And in parentheses, I'll put PT for periodic table. So you can kind of find these there. A compound, however, is when you have two or more types of atoms, but they have to be bound together in a really specific ratio and arrangement. So a compound here is a combination or a combo of two or more types of atoms together in a fixed ratio. That's really the most important thing right there. And I'll further explain that. And of course, I'll give you all some examples here in a second too. So if you're an element or if you're a compound, then you fall under this category called a pure substance. What we say about a pure substance is that you're a substance with a fixed composition. Have fixed compositions. What that means is that no matter where you find a pure element or a pure compound in the world, it's going to have the exact same composition. And there's, around us, there's not many things like this. Most of the things we see vary a lot from one, place to another, like sweet tea, for example. Not a pure substance because it doesn't have a fixed composition. It's going to differ one restaurant to another, for example. So a pure substance will always have the same composition because it has to be either one type of atom, which it can't change, or a compound that has a really fixed ratio. So here, if I give you a couple of examples of these. So elements, we kind of already talked about this, but on the periodic table, I'll put over here some examples. Something like plain copper, so Cu, Fe for iron. We'll see that some atoms come as a pair. So we'll talk about this later, but like oxygen gas, for example, it comes in the form of O2, which just means it's always two oxygens put together. It still is an element though, because it's not two or more types of atoms, if you can see the difference there. So it's still the same type of atom. Hydrogen gas is the same. Hopefully my comma's not messing you up there. O2, H2. Those are examples of elements. Compounds. Water is a compound. Now, of course, for us, the sink water at my house will be different than the water at school because there's going to be different, things added in there. But if you have pure water as a compound, it's always going to have two H's and one O together in that fixed ratio. And so that makes it a combo. Yes, a combo, but a compound. Carbon dioxide is CO2. Carbon monoxide is CO. And you can tell these two are really similar, but CO is poisonous to us, right? Carbon monoxide, whereas carbon dioxide is totally fine and is around us all the time. Those are examples of compounds. So a couple more characteristics of pure substances up here is we can say they have fixed composition.
Hello? Hello, class. So today